What's up, everybody? Welcome to Puzzle Huddle with Experts. I have another fantastic guest, Dr. Tierra Ellis. She's a PhD psychologist. I've waited so long to get her on my calendar, and it's so wonderful that I have her here today. Dr. Ellis, thank you for joining today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, just to kick us off, can you share what your professional expertise is, what you kind of have your education is, and where you feel most comfortable as an expert professionally?
Sure. So I'm a psychologist. I'm a licensed clinical and school psychologist. I'm also a community psychologist, and I am a professor. I do a lot. I have my own practice. I have my own nonprofit. Where I specialize is working with adolescents and young adults, those who've encountered traumatic experiences. And I also very, very, very passionate about hip hop and mental health and working with Black and Latinx adolescents and young adults.
Okay. For you to describe some of those things, I suspect there's a suggestion of some of these things in your childhood. Can you tell me about your childhood and what kind of kids you were?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say I was that child that I work with. I was that adolescent. I was that youth. And so my childhood, I would say, growing up in a low income area, low income family, the hood, for lack of better words, and just being around a lot of Black and brown and the police, and so I would say that I knew the resources that were not provided to me. I knew the resources that I needed. And, being the professional that I am now, I try to strive to give those resources. But as a child, I loved school. I loved sports. I loved really just learning and of course, there was a lot of barriers that also were in place because of the lack of resources, that were just lack of resources and then just being who I was, my social location in America, right? And so that's what I would say is just describing my childhood. I'm very, very passionate about helping other people, and I think that's how I know that's how I got in my profession.
Passionate about helping other people. Is that something that you learn from a parent, or do you have younger siblings, or sometimes that just shows up because of the family structure?
Yeah, I'm the oldest of six. And so, yeah. And so growing up in a household, being the oldest of six, I definitely had siblings that were like my children.
Yeah, you become a parent to some degree. You're not paying bills, but you're parenting.
Yeah, and then sometimes you weren't paying bills, it just, having so much responsibility at such a young age was it was like, kind of like a gift and a curse at the same time. It definitely helped me as I've gotten older in regards to how responsible I am. I'm still very nurturing as an individual. So I think that I know a lot of that comes from my upbringing for sure, and the responsibility I had. My mom was a single parent of 3 for a while, and so I had to step in and help out for quite some time too.
Now, with a large family that can consume a lot of resources and time, was there any space for any formal activities? Did you do some dance, track? What kind of activities?
I did. I love sports. I ran track. I ran cross country. I played basketball. Ball is life. Yes. And I dance. Dance is also, I minored in dance actually. So I was always involved. I'm a part of a sorority. I'm a Delta Sigma Theta sorority.
Okay. Let's clap one time for the Deltas.
Love that. So I'm a part of a lot of different networks, and that's also something I value, is being connected with other people. I'm a connector, and I love being connected. And I know that a lot of that comes from childhood too, for which I didn't really have mentors. I didn't really have people to look up to. I always looked up, God was the person. They'd be like, who do you look up to as God? That's my father, and it was, and so growing up and then going to college and then grad school, seeing these organizations and wanting to be connected, I think that was me trying to fill the gaps that I didn't have when I was a child.
Yeah. Can you your undergraduate majors? Can you can you describe what those were and what kind of your plan for that assembly of majors and minors? What you hope to do with that?
Yeah, so my undergraduate majors, I majored in psychology and African American studies, and my minor was dance. And honestly, how that even happened was my mom, she was a juvenile detention officer, and that coupled with being in an AP psychology course is how the field found me. I don't
In
even,
high school, you took AP psychology?
I did.
Yes, you.
And
Okay, you was a top student.
I like to say that I was the girl of the year for my high school.
Oh wow.
But yeah, no, not to toot my own horn, but
Yeah.
but I definitely will say that those two things coupled is how the field found me. Even we had a representative from Arizona State University, that's where I got my undergraduate degree, who came to my high school, Casa Grande High School, and I didn't even have to go out to apply. They came to our high school to help to enroll us, like if you were interested. And then getting a grant, it just like everything was in alignment. It just worked out in the way in which it did. But that is how the field found me. And when I got to Arizona State, I realized, you know what? I want to learn more about my culture. So that's
Yeah.
when I double majored in African American studies. And I said, I need to learn more about who I am, especially as I navigate trying to be a professional. I need to know more about my identity because they don't teach us about being Black in America, in the schools. So that's how I double majored in African American studies. And dance is always something that I felt free. It's freed me from, like if I've had adverse experiences and just different experiences in childhood, I go to dance. I dance. I love to dance. I love the arts. And so
What's your favorite style of dance? What style is that's where you really feel good?
I would say it really depends on my mood, honestly, but I would say I really like I like jazz. I really like jazz a lot. I
Okay.
like sometimes I have concerts in my home by
Wait a
myself. Where I
minute.
literally get in a mirror and like all of my inanimate objects become my audience and they cheering me on and everything. And I just like to move. But I would say in regards to formally, I would say jazz. I like jazz quite a bit. I also like even just hip hop, just I
Okay.
mean, I really appreciate just the movement of body and just how much it frees you. But I would say that jazz. I would
Who are some of your favorite dancers? I, I don't know if it's Timberlake, Janet, or I don't know, Judah Jameson. Where do you land in terms
yeah.
of?
I would you're so funny you say Janet. I always looked up to Janet Jackson and just especially when growing up and Janet and just seeing just the way that the choreography is always what struck me. I love Beyonce too.
Yeah, okay.
She's
We
an
all
entertainer.
the
We
whole
all
world.
love Beyonce, but growing up, I definitely love Janet. I would also say I even like Jennifer Lopez, and I mean, I'm very versatile and it's not a specific background or anything of that nature. You mentioned Judah James, definitely. I mean, there's so many different dancers that I looked up to that I just for different reasons, too. And just the versatile, just being versatile in the field of it.
All right. And then walk me through your interest in African American studies, or what might be some of the things you learned. Who are maybe some of your favorite personalities in African American history?
Oh man. Yeah. I would definitely say, I mean, I love Malcolm X. Definitely um there's a lot about Malcolm X that I admire and just an authentic individual who just like, not to be like, well, he did what he wanted, but he did. And it was just, he did what he thought was right. And I think that I embody a lot of that.
Mhm.
And so I would say him. I would also say W.B. Du Bois, like just this intellect, the
Oh
intellect.
yeah. Hmm.
And then also just knowing, I'm a doctorate, someone who got a doctorate degree,
Hmm.
and him being the first Black individual, the history of that. I just really, I really look up to him, and I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different, even psychology. There's a lot of different Black individuals that led the way and I look up to, and, I admire, and how they really, broke the generational curses for Black people as a whole, not even just like not just like in a family, but just as a community.
Yeah, right. For the whole country. Yeah, pretty profound in both of those people.
Yeah.
And so you graduated, but you didn't stop there. What was the compelling reason for you to re-enroll in school and add additional
Sure.
levels of education formally?
I would say, so I am the first generation college student. Let me start by saying that.
Okay.
And being the first generation college student, I didn't even know, I didn't know what I didn't know, but I did know I wanted better. And I knew that I aspired to also set an example for my family, those after me, my children, and all of those. I don't have children yet, but when I do. And so I wanted to be a curse breaker in my own family. Like I said, and that's both sides. But I also knew that my purpose required me to get further education and to be where I'm at. Funny though, because when I applied to Howard, I initially applied to the master's program in school psychology. I did not see myself as a doctor or anything like that. What happened was when I applied, I deferred a year because I was like, you know what? I didn't have to pay for ASU. I'm going to take a year off and go to LA and just make money for a year. Like I was going to make all that money all, in a year in LA, right?
Yeah, LA, right.
So I literally did that. I worked 4 jobs for about 2 weeks. And then I was not sleeping. And then I worked 3 jobs for about a good 10 months. Then I moved to DC. But in the interim, this is very important. The associate dean of Howard University School of Education program called me and said, Tierra, I looking at your application, why didn't you apply to the PhD program? And I said, oh no,
you're like, you're going too far.
Right. You seen what I applied for and you just stay with that. Yeah. He said, no, I really think that you should apply. And the program is like, you can have a bachelor's degree and go straight into the PhD track.
Okay.
So that I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll see what happens. Whatever. I did, and I got in, and then they had a lot of applicants that year. So they was like, we have a wait list, so let us know. And I was like, wow, I made it, and there's a wait list after me.
Ahead of some people?
Yeah.
So that was like, the AP psychology. Yeah. So
right. You see what the AP psychology did to me. So I said, you know what? I accept, I'm gonna go. And it actually, that's when I realized, I saw how God just works, where I took a year off and I thought, oh, I'm taking a step back when I was actually moving forward. If I would have gone straight into that program, and I would have wasted money, time, energy, and I actually took some time away. So I just want to stress the importance of, especially when things aren't going your way or going the way you think it's supposed to go, I definitely trusted God, and knowing that, this little pit stop is actually a part of the forward movement. And that was something that I learned in that time. But anyways, going back to what you were asking me, so that is how that happened in regards to me getting into the program at Howard. That's my unique journey. And once I got there, I elevated every year. I exceeded, did a lot of, and honestly, every year informed me on where I would be to this moment. I didn't know what I wanted. Every year gave me some insight. Let me say that.
Yeah, well, you were originally targeting the master's program and then entering into the PhD program. Did you start that PhD with a specific research interest, or did you just come in there needing to understand what even a PhD was all about?
Listen, when I tell you, I had done research when I was at ASU in this lady's lab. She was a graduate student, but it was like on pro-social behaviors and spirituality and everything. I just want to do research, not my interest. But what I will say is that I did not know what I wanted to do just yet. I will also say that I'm interested in dismantling the school to prison pipeline. That has always been something I've been interested in. Go back to my mom, who was a juvenile detention officer, right?
Okay.
That is where that interest came. Remember when I found the field found me?
Yeah.
So that's always been in my heart. And to this day, I do work in that area too. Now, what I will say is how I found my research was a funding opportunity. It was the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. They have a partnership with Howard University, where it's called NCAS, where they have Howard is the home of the grant that they had. And there was a lot of what they call minority. I say minoritized because we are not minor, but they call it minority serving institutions, right? And so it was a couple of institutions under which they had students who were in a fellowship who were in STEM. And they also had psychologists because it's social sciences. And so this woman needed a GA, and she was the education lead. And that funding, I also needed funding, and that is how I found my dissertation was I had to make school psychology and the atmospheric sciences, or STEM, marry to some degree. So that's how I found it.
Okay. And then what did you end up studying for your dissertation?
Yes. So the title of my dissertation is a strengths-based approach to exploring the psychosocial factors that contribute to the representation of Black charter high school students in advanced placement STEM courses.
All right. Now I'm gonna put on my kindergarten hat, right? So tell me again, please.
Okay. So essentially what I was doing is I saw so much in the literature that there was a lot of, in particular, white researchers who had this deficit discourse of Black students who were not in STEM courses. And there was a lot of the researchers saying, this is the research on why they're not in these courses, and this is what we need to do. And I was like, why don't you go to the source? Ask these students why they are in these. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna have a strengths-based approach, knowing I'm very strengths-based, and especially knowing how important it is to be strengths-based with Black students, because we are told Black youth, Black people, we told so much of what we can't do. And the strengths-based approach is so essential. So I wanted to have that strengths-based approach to explore, why are these Black students in these AP STEM courses? Why? Rather than why aren't they? And I wanted to hear from the youth, from the students, why y'all here? I don't want to hear from researchers and what they think. I want to know from the source. So that is what I did. And that helped me to understand the reason in which they enroll into these courses.
All right, take me back to your high school. Why were you in AP psychology?
I was also in AP STEM too. I took AP physics. I took AP statistics. I had a lot of AP courses I also took. So I was that student as well. Yeah. Now you said, why was I in those courses? Because I also like being challenged. That's a good question. Nobody has ever asked me that. I appreciate that question. I like being challenged. I also knew I was the only Black girl in these courses. And then there was this other Black boy in those courses in my high school. So happened to be, we were both the Black girl and boy of the year. But I knew that like I said, I like to be challenged, and I like to learn. I love learning. And I also knew that I just want to take my mind, my intellect to the highest place possible. Yeah. And being in courses that were, just regular courses, not to not to like knock them, but I also knew that I was more advanced than that,
Yeah. Okay. And and regular courses are good if that is where your academic or interest level is. Yeah. No need getting yourself into water deeper than necessary. But so what did you find through your research, coming back to your dissertation and looking at students in AP and advanced courses? What were the commonalities in terms of their inspiration or motive? Or what was it? All their parents were doctors, or what got them involved in STEM AP courses?
Yes. So there were 8 evolved themes from that actual research, and the evolved themes were sufficient support. And in regards to sufficient support, that's where they felt like, I have adequate support to assist me in my courses. And then there was their interest prior. The second evolved theme was their interest prior to or during high school. And so those were those participants who were interested in STEM before high school or while attending high school. Then there were those influences on STEM interests. And that was the third theme. And that particularly talked about how there were those various influences that sparkled their interests, essentially, just for lack of better words. The unfair education system was the fourth and evolved theme that came from my research. That theme, they actually perceived the education system as unfair and working against them. And the reasons they included were a lack of funding and the appropriate materials that they needed to succeed in their courses. So that was another theme that came about. Their perseverance was another big one, that they said, despite the adversity and the challenges, they still enrolled, and they didn't want to give up. And, for various reasons, which resonated with my experience as well when I was in those courses. Then this was the one that was the big one: forced enrollment. They said the school educators forced their participation to enroll in these courses without their permission, regardless of their interests or desires. And that likely was due to these educators wanting to make sure they kept these courses, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So, and so that was that. And then compensatory strategies was another theme where they felt unsupported, and they lacked they lacked sufficient supports, and they sought compensatory strategies to ensure they had that success. And some of those strategies may have looked like, Googling, sometimes cheating, whatever that may have looked at. But and then the last one was the perception of the teacher's competence. How they perceived their teacher's competence, where it was inconsistent or incompetent. So these were all the evolved themes from that research. But to answer your question, it's their perseverance and the sufficient support. Sufficient support was the one that was most endorsed, is why they were in those courses.
Given all this expertise that you've accumulated and being a member of a large family, what do your family members call you for? Like, what is your phone with? What kinds of things are you on the hook for? Because you're a PhD expert.
Sure.
Are you the family therapist, or can you avoid that to some degree?
That's a really good question. It really is. So honestly, they see me on social media, they hear me talk about mental health. I love talking about mental health. What I will say is my family, thinking about the stigma that exists in Black communities, in the Black community, my family have looked at me as, okay, I know Tierra has talked about mental health and therapy and all these things that is so not comfortable, or I may have looked at, this is for white people, not us, but I'm gonna give Tierra a chance. And so what I've had was several family members reach out to me. I just had one of my little brothers actually just the other day, but several family members reach out to me asking me, where do I start? How do I find a therapist? And literally I'll get on a directory and navigate them through how to find a therapist, and sometimes, and I tend to use psychology today, don't have any relationship with them, but just it's helpful in filtering exactly what you want. And a lot of those directories will do that. But that is how my family has reached out to me. Sometimes they'll reach out to me and try to, not to get therapy, but Tierra, I know that you have a neutral mind, and the way that you think, you're not biased to a lot of things. And so they like to pick my brain when it comes to mental health and in situations because of having a level head.
Yeah. What are some practical things that, because I imagine your family members aren't paying you. So when you need them to, when they're looking for help getting grounded or
Sure.
sorting through something, like what are some of your go-to things that you say, hey, you need to go and do these two or three things, because they haven't offered you compensation. So what do you pull out of your back pocket?
Well, one thing I will say is that it's important that I guide them rather than become their therapist, because first and foremost, that's unethical. That's against my ethics codes, right?
Yeah.
And so guiding them is one thing. Another thing is I'm very big on, even when they come to me, validating their experience, even if they come to me about something about myself, validating their experience, because that's still their experience. That's how they experience me. It doesn't mean it's all what it is. It's just their experience. So I would say validating their experience, and then coming to, hoping that they can also hear mine. So I would say that. Another thing too is people want to be normalized in their experience and not feel like they are the only ones. And so if it comes to it, even normalizing their experience, if I got that opportunity to do so. Well, I know you said 3. I'm gonna add another one. Another tool that I tend to do is if someone comes to me, family, friends, whoever it is, I'll ask them, do you want me to listen or do you want me to give advice? And just wanting to know how do you want me to share this space with you? And I just want to respect your story, your situation. And so that is something that I've definitely have practiced, and not intruding on somebody's situation, especially if they're coming to me for support. I don't want to step on their toes and then them to feel they can't come back,
Yeah. Does your family, who checks on you? Right. So if you provide this role for your family, there's the opposite, where you are a human being in existence too, with all the things that life has to offer, both good and bad. So where do you take your concerns that you have about life and whatever experiences you have that you deserve to talk to somebody about?
Yeah, no, my dad and I are very, very close. I did also, last year was the first time that I was like, you know what, I'm a therapist. I want to also go to therapy. I've not had the experience yet myself. And I also want to practice what I preach, especially being a model for my youth, my family, to say, I also did this too. And I know that even just from my childhood, I imagine, like, I look at mental health like it's an onion, where I imagine there are layers that I can still peel back and heal from. We're all still, I feel like we can all heal from something, especially being Black in America, So I definitely, I had that, but I will say that my father is my best friend. And so having him, that's definitely one of my outlets, is my dad, and I'm one of his as well. And so, yeah.
Awesome. I want to talk to you about this book chapter, the students and parents, students with parents that have had substance abuse dependence.
Sure.
Can you describe just what the basic concept of that book chapter is?
Yeah. So in regards to that, it was essentially providing supports to parents, educators for those students. I know in particular, I focused on anxiety and fear. And I talked a lot about just how to navigate when someone does have anxiety and fear, when it comes to whether it's like, how can I say this, trying to get right, so to say, or whatever it may be that may be contributing to the substance use, and so I talked in particular about what are some more, so like I said, strategies in regards to that. And like I said, I could share a few of those strategies in regards to anxiety, just breathing techniques and ways in which you can ground yourself. I talked a lot about grounding, even thinking about just other ways in which even exercise and how that can help with you increasing your serotonin levels, those, the dopamine and all those
Yeah.
those happy chemicals. And so where if you are in this place of fear of getting out of this dark place, these are ways in which strategies in which you can go to kind of put in your toolbox to assist you in getting out of those places.
In the case of this book chapter, were the students with parents that have substance abuse issues, were they students, are these elementary school students, middle school, high school, college students? Which level students are included in your
Yeah, so in regards to that, we were speaking to students in general. This chapter was specifically published with the National Association of School Psychologists. And so it was like a handout. So they used this at a conference.
Mhm.
And again, like I was saying, like it really spoke to how students can navigate those experiences, and so yeah, so that's what that was about. And it was, like I said, it wasn't a particular type, it was just students in general, K through 12, K through
Okay.
12 students. Yeah.
All right. And another thing I've seen that you have a high level interest in is culturally relevant interventions and support.
Yeah.
What are some things that psychologists and even and patients should think about in terms of making sure the support they're either offering or receiving is
Sure.
kind of is formed in a fashion that it's culturally relevant to them?
Yeah, you said, how do I make sure that I'm
Or
doing
what should
that?
we look for if we're either offering support or receiving support?
Yeah, I would say what I look to do, I do a lot of community-based participatory research. And I also do a lot of, even with the interventions that I do or the work I do, I collaborate with the people in which I work with. So I say all that to say, I hear what they say is what they need. And I think that that's something I do first.
Yeah.
So to be culturally sensitive and culturally relevant, we can say that all day, but it's like everybody, even thinking of subcultures, even within the Black culture or the Black community, I could be culturally sensitive to you, but I to another person, it might mean something different. That might, being culturally sensitive to them who's also Black, sorry, being culturally sensitive to somebody else who's also Black may mean something different. So I ascertain, what does this look like for you, for me to be culturally sensitive? You know what I mean? And so, but I also do look at culture. I incorporate hip hop a lot of the times, especially with working with adolescents and young adults.
How do you what is a way that you can incorporate hip hop?
A way that I incorporate hip hop is through, I could share with how I do it with my nonprofit. So I have a nonprofit I founded called Psyches of Color.
Mhm.
And we have a program called Exert Your Voice. And that is a program in particular where we we use hip hop as a muse to
Mhm.
create around just in different mental health topics. So for instance, I'll give you an example. Say that the topic is fear,
Mhm.
and we might use a song or something of that nature. And from that song, like I said, we use it as a muse, but from that song, we will create how, and when I say create, it might be somebody create a poem, write bars,
Mhm.
draw, do some art, where they're creating a way in which they are standing up to their fears. You know what I'm saying?
Got it.
And so that is a way in which I culturally respond to our Black and Brown youth in my nonprofit through Exert Your Voice and through hip hop, and mental health. Does that make sense?
Yeah, two more things I want to get from you, and then I think
Sure.
it's going to be time for me to let you go. You mentioned culturally relevant interventions also for Latinx.
Mhm.
So how do you ensure that you have the cultural insight to
Mhm.
provide those solutions? Just give you your background. If Latinx is outside of your lived experience, how do
Mhm.
you get a good understanding of that culture so that you can offer interventions in that space?
Well, it's not outside of my lived experience. It actually is in my family. And it's
Okay.
also when, like, Arizona, being from Arizona, it is also I've been around a lot of Latinx individuals. So it's again, like I said, it's in the family, and it's also those in which I also I was surrounded with
Okay.
being in Arizona. So it's not unfamiliar to me. Now, what I will say is that I do identify, there's a lot I identify as or with. I usually say I'm a Black woman, although I know I'm a Black woman and a Native American woman. That's highly what I identify with. I also know that there's other cultures and within my family that I'm very familiar with. And so what I will say is there's subcultures within the Latinx community, just like there are within the Black
Yeah.
community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying in regards to, I still allow people to be the owner of their experiences. So when I do research and when I do work, I tend to, so like say for instance, I create interventions. I'm actually about to pilot another intervention for our Pen Pal POC program that I created. But before I pilot the intervention, we create our modules, I tend to, like I said, I do community-based participatory research. I tend to go to the participants first and present to them, this is what I plan to do. Can you give feedback? You get what I'm saying?
You said the
And
Pen Pop PLC.
yes, Pen Pal POC is a program where we connect system impacted Black and Latinx youth in the community. This program in particular, we're going to connect them to students at a university, and I'm a professor at Cal Poly Pomona. So we're going to connect them to students at Cal Poly Pomona, where they're going to, and students who are in psychology, who are majoring in psychology, but they're pen paling. But they both, so students from this school, who major in psychology, and then student and youth in the community who both identify as Black or Latinx individuals between the ages of 13 and 25, who also identify as being system impacted, which can be direct or indirect, where they've been in the system themselves, or whether it's foster care, incarceration, or indirectly where they have a daddy, an uncle, or somebody who's incarcerated, where they're still impacted. So impacted by the system to some degree. But before we actually pilot this intervention, I'm going to our participants and presenting the intervention to them like, hey, this is what we're doing. These are our modules. Are these your needs as you identifying as a person of Black or Latinx descent who's system impacted? Are we speaking to your needs, or is there something else you would like to see in these modules? And that's where we work collaboratively with the participants. They give us our feedback, and then that's us being culturally sensitive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, awesome. So last question, and hopefully you'll allow me to schedule some more time with you in a few months, and I can go get back for what I missed.
Yeah.
It's hard to have a favorite Bible study, but what is one of your favorite Bible stories?
Oh my gosh, that is an easy one to say. Joseph. Joseph is between Joseph and Job, but I tend to say Joseph quite often. And I just was talking about this the other day. And I imagine you probably want to know why I said Joseph. And so I'll share. Joseph was a person who he had a lot of he experienced a lot of there was a lot of barriers, adversary, like it was a lot of things he encountered and experienced, and he had such a pure heart. He just knew his purpose, and people were just, how can I say this? He knew his purpose, but others were not accepting of his purpose, right? And he did so much, like he tried to do so much right, and the more that he did right, the more he experienced like adverse experiences, right? And so I resonate with Joseph because I myself have had a lot of those experiences where I've been through a lot of adverse experiences, being a first gen student, being somebody who is really broke down a lot of generational curses in my family. you know, from mental health to education to, I can go on and on and on. And then going, like I say, I didn't know what I didn't know, especially being one of the first in my family to do it. And so Joseph resonates with me because Joseph also on this journey, trusting God and still like, I'm not sure why this is going on, but I trust you. And that's me. I trust God. I might not know why I'm going through this, but I know that it's part of my purpose. And my purpose is bigger than me. And so that is why Joseph resonates so much more, like so much to me. And yeah.
All right. Amen on that, Dr. Ellis. All right, I'm going to let you go, but you got to promise in a couple months, once you get done doing all the 2,000 things you have to do, we'll hopefully can plan for another time, and I can learn some more from you.
Definitely.
So to the audience, thank you so much for participating today. If you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, we would really appreciate it. Dr. Ellis, this has been absolutely wonderful. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you for yours.